I didn't walk out of the time machine feeling entertained. I walked out feeling unsettled, like the film knew something it wasn't supposed to tell me. When I first saw the time machine, I was overwhelmed and exhilarated. The image of that machine lingered in my mind, flowers blooming and dying behind glass, seasons racing past in silence. The howling wind in the Morlock caverns. The still silhouettes of the Eloi, frozen in a future that had forgotten how to defend itself. It felt safe. A polished Hollywood classic. But the older I got, the more carefully I rewatched it, the more that calm began to crack. Did you know the female Eloi lead was only 16 years old when filming began? That the male lead was rushed to the hospital after nearly suffocating on set? That the iconic time machine was built from junkyard scrap? And that the ending you remember was never the original ending at all? Today, we reopen that time machine, not to admire it, but to travel back into the darker corners of its production, and to the ending the film never wanted you to see. The female lead was only 16, the detail that silenced the set. To most audiences, Weena appeared as a familiar science fiction archetype, innocent, fragile, almost unreal. Soft-spoken, empty-eyed, smiling faintly. More symbol than person. What MGM never wanted you to know is that Yvette Mimieux was only 16 years old during filming. Not almost. Not nearly. A minor. Rod Taylor, her on-screen counterpart, was 29, nearly twice her age. That gap was never mentioned in promotions. MGM concealed it deliberately, knowing the moment audiences learned the truth, the romance would feel deeply uncomfortable. As a result, the set was tightly controlled. No physical contact. No lingering looks. No intimacy beyond what contracts allowed. Every scene was carefully framed, emotionally sterilized. Years later, director George Pal admitted his discomfort. His justification was that Weena was meant to embody childlike innocence, a being that had never fully matured in a broken world. The problem is, that was true both on screen and in real life. Once you know this, it's hard to watch those scenes the same way, not because of the performances, but because of the thin ethical line Hollywood crossed, then quietly erased. Rod Taylor nearly died, when fiction came too close to reality. To most viewers, the Morlock caverns feel eerie and claustrophobic, dark, unsettling, but safely cinematic. What you're actually seeing is real danger. Those scenes were filmed on a sealed soundstage with low ceilings and poor ventilation. To create atmosphere, technicians pumped thick smoke mixed with dry ice into the space. On screen, it drifted beautifully. Off camera, it displaced oxygen. Rod Taylor absorbed the worst of it. Headaches. Nausea. Dizziness. At first, the crew dismissed it as fatigue. Then Taylor collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with acute carbon monoxide poisoning. Doctors later confirmed that 30 more minutes could have meant permanent brain damage, or death. Production shut down for a full week. Ventilation was rebuilt. Safety rules were rewritten. George Pal later said it was the only time he was truly afraid on set. From that moment on, the film stopped being science fiction. It had brushed against real death. A time machine built from scrap. A masterpiece born in a junkyard. That time machine is unforgettable, brass levers, spinning discs, crowded dials, a throne-like chair daring someone to challenge time itself. It looks priceless. It wasn't. With a budget squeezed tight, production designer William Ferrari scoured Los Angeles junkyards daily. Brass fittings were discarded scraps. Clock components were broken parts. Car pieces came from wreckage. The control panel used real antique pressure gauges. The rotating disc came from an old industrial lathe. The velvet was salvaged from a demolished theater. The crystals were shards of shattered chandeliers. Total cost, about $5,000. On screen, it looked worth 10 times that. What we now call steampunk wasn't born from artistic ambition, it was born from necessity. And it proved a quiet truth of filmmaking. When resources disappear, creativity steps in. The ending that was cut, when the future became too dangerous. You probably remember the ending. The time traveler returns home, gathers books, takes 3 candles, steps into the machine, and vanishes. Fade to black. Safe. Clean. That wasn't the real ending. George Pal filmed another version, one that left test audiences in silence. In it, The time traveler refuses to leave. He stays in the future. Teaches the Eloi to read, to think, to fight back. He dismantles a system where the weak exist only to be hunted. No metaphor. No ambiguity. The message was clear. Seeing injustice and walking away makes you complicit. MGM executives immediately recognized the danger. Audiences wouldn't just watch, they'd be challenged. Entertainment would become responsibility. So the decision was swift. The ending was erased behind closed doors. Replaced with ambiguity. Safer for box offices. Fatal to the message. No one is forced to stay. No one is held accountable. The future is neatly wrapped and put away. Rod Taylor was cast because everyone else refused. It's hard to imagine anyone but Rod Taylor as the time traveler. Curious. Skeptical. Human. Ironically, he was never the studio's first choice. MGM wanted James Mason, a serious star. Mason read the script and dismissed it as childish nonsense. Others followed. At the time, science fiction was seen as B-movie territory. As rejections piled up, George Pal suggested Rod Taylor, an unknown Australian actor. Executives hesitated. No star power. No guarantees. They agreed for one reason. Taylor was cheap. And in that accident of casting, they found something perfect. A man ordinary enough to make the impossible feel believable. George Pal's 15-year obsession. Some films are born at the right time. Others exist because someone refuses to quit. George Pal bought the rights to The Time Machine in 1945. For 15 years, every studio told him the same thing. Too old, too slow, too intellectual. Victorian time travel wouldn't sell tickets. Pal disagreed. He believed cinema wasn't just about trends, it was about ideas worth preserving. In 1959, MGM finally agreed, with one condition, an $800,000 budget. Modest even then. 15 years of rejection didn't break him. They trapped him in a corner where quitting was no longer possible. George Pal said yes instantly. He knew this was his only chance. Some films aren't born because the time is right. They exist because someone waited so long that failure became unacceptable. Turning time itself into something visible came at a brutal cost. The shop window sequence alone required more than 2,000 manual adjustments. No undo button. No shortcuts. Just exhausted hands moving clocks, mannequins, and light frame by frame. 6 months of work for seconds on screen. To audiences, time flies. For the filmmakers, it nearly stopped. That was the price of making time something you could feel. When science fiction became real, there is a scene that still freezes the room into silence. No music. No drama. Just a blinding white flash and a city erased. That moment wasn't staged. George Pal used real nuclear test footage supplied by the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission. Real mushroom clouds. Real shock waves. When the film premiered, parents were furious. Children weren't watching fiction, they were witnessing humanity's possible end. Years later, officials admitted they regretted allowing it. In a film about the future, the most terrifying scene came from the present. The Morlocks paid with their bodies. The Morlocks weren't camera tricks. They were men sealed inside rubber suits weighing nearly 16 kilograms, with no ventilation. Temperatures inside reached over 38 degrees Celsius. Actors lasted 15 minutes before collapsing. Some were hospitalized. They weren't credited. No recognition. In a film about an exploited underground class, the people who played them lived the same reality. H.G. Wells' son called it a betrayal. For audiences, The Time Machine was dark science fiction. For G.P. Wells, it was an insult to his father's warning. He accused the film of stripping away the novel's socialist message, calling it a Hollywood product that castrated the original meaning. Pal defended himself. In the Cold War era, a political film would never have survived. Compromise was the only way the story could exist. That argument still hasn't been settled. The Oscar the creator never touched. The film won the 1961 Oscar for visual effects. George Pal never went on stage. Under Academy rules, producers weren't eligible for technical awards. Years later, The man who accepted it admitted the truth. Pal deserved it. He designed the effects, tested them, risked time and budget. The film won, but the glory slipped past the man who made it possible. $15,000 for a few seconds of history. The mannequin scene, decades passing in silence, nearly vanished. MGM called it wasteful. Cut it. Pal refused. He fought, delayed production, and won. What the studio saw as excess became the most iconic moment in the film. In cinema, the most expensive thing is often the one thing you cannot cut. Fired in 3 days. Sebastian Cabot was dismissed after showing up drunk on set. Every scene had to be res-hot. Time lost. Money burned. Talent didn't save him. Discipline mattered more. A time machine doesn't just move characters through history. It carries the film itself, cracks, mistakes, and all, forward in time.